$5. That is all Nora Morgan has left in her pocket at 3:22 in the morning on a Wednesday in August, and the rain has not stopped for 6 hours, and her left eye has swollen shut completely, the skin around it purple and black like someone had pressed a bruise into her face and left it there to harden. The checkered floor of Murphy's diner stretches out beneath her, black and white squares worn soft by 40 years of footsteps, and the neon sign in the window hums a sound like something dying slowly, like a bulb that knows it will burn out but keeps glowing anyway. The smell hangs heavy, stale coffee and grease and the particular loneliness that fills a diner at 3 in the morning when no one comes here anymore except people who have nowhere else to be. Nora sits in the corner booth, the one farthest from the window, both hands wrapped around a ceramic mug that is cold now, has been cold for 10 minutes, and she cannot afford to order anything else. The waitress, a woman named Carol with tired eyes and blonde hair pinned up in a way that suggests she stopped caring about it years ago, has stopped asking if Nora needs anything else. She knows the answer is no. The tears have stopped. Her shoulders no longer shake the way they were shaking when she walked in here, drenched through, mascara running in rivers down her cheeks. Now she just sits. Still. Like someone who has learned that movement requires energy she does not have. The handprint bruises wrap around her throat like a necklace made of violence. Dark. Deep. The kind that photographs well, the kind that police recognize immediately, the kind that she has been trying to hide under her collar for 2 days now, ever since Douglas Hale came to her apartment and asked her again to recruit the new girls, and when she said no, when she actually said the word out loud to a man who has not heard no in approximately 15 years, his hand had reached out and closed around her neck like a door slamming shut. Douglas Hale is a human trafficker. He controls a network that stretches across Boston and into New Hampshire, into Rhode Island. He buys women. That is the term the other girls use. He buys them. And Nora was bought 3 years ago when she needed $500 for Emma's school registration, and he gave it to her, and then he owned her in ways that no contract could ever express, in ways that lived under her skin like an infection that would not respond to antibiotics. 6 months ago, he asked her to recruit. To go find girls the way he had found her, desperate girls, girls with empty pockets, girls with children and eviction notices, girls who would do anything for money. He asked her to bring them to him. And something inside Nora's chest, something small and fragile and barely alive, said no. The door of Murphy's diner opens. Rain sweeps in with a sound like 1,000 whispers all speaking at once, and the temperature drops in the way it does when weather brings the outside in. Nora does not look up. She has learned not to look at people. Looking leads to conversation. Conversation leads to recognition. Recognition leads to complications. But she hears the footsteps stop. They are deliberate. Measured. The footsteps of someone who is not in any kind of hurry, who does not rush, who has trained his body to move in a way that suggests he has all the time in the world and all the power in the room. The man who makes those footsteps is 6'3" tall. His suit, a charcoal grey so dark it is almost black, is tailored in a way that costs more than Nora has earned in the last 4 months combined. It is soaked. Rain clings to the fabric and drips onto the diner floor in small pools that will be his and his alone. His name is Aleandro Castellano. He has been the most dangerous mafia boss in Boston for 7 years. Before that, he was the most dangerous man in New York. Before that, he was dangerous in ways that history books have largely forgotten. His hair is black, shot through with silver at the temples, and it is slicked back from his forehead in a way that shows his face completely. His face is the kind of beautiful that causes problems, sharp angles and skin that looks expensive, eyes the color of a storm in December, dark and penetrating and capable of reading a person the way a book reads itself. There is a scar running from the corner of his left eye to his cheekbone. Someone put that scar there intentionally. Someone wanted him to remember something, to carry it on his skin forever, and he does. He stands in the doorway of Murphy's diner and stares directly at Nora Morgan. In that moment, neither of them knows anything except this: she looks like someone who is dying slowly, and he recognizes that look because he sees it in the mirror every morning. Enzo, who followed Aleandro inside, water dripping from the collar of his own suit, exchanges a glance with Luca, who is still in the black SUV parked outside, watching through the Rain Street window. Something is wrong. In 7 years of working for this man, they have learned to recognize the moment when something shifts, when the gravity in a room changes, when the air itself becomes dangerous in a new way. Aleandro walks to her booth. He does not ask permission. He sits down across from her, and the leather of the booth sighs under his weight. Nora's one good eye opens wide. "Do not move," he says, and his voice is deep and solid like an oath, like someone speaking words that cannot be taken back. "I have not touched anything," she whispers. "I promise. I was just the rain. I was waiting for it to stop." "What happened to your eye?" She does not answer. She looks down at her cold mug, and her hands begin to tremble in a way she cannot control. The rain intensifies outside. It sounds like someone is throwing stones at the diner's windows. The neon sign flickers once, twice, then steadies. Nora reaches into the pocket of her wet jacket, slowly, because she has learned to move slowly around men, and pulls out a leather wallet. It is soaked through. Water drips from it onto the checkered table. The leather is soft, expensive, the kind of wallet that belongs to someone who can afford to drop it in a parking lot without checking that it is still there. She slides it across the table toward him. "I found this," she says, her voice barely a whisper now. "Outside. In the rain. I thought the owner might come back. I thought if someone lost mine, I would hope someone would keep it safe." Aleandro does not reach for it immediately. He stares at this girl, this young woman, this broken thing who found a stranger's wallet in the middle of the night and did not open it, did not steal the money inside, did not let desperation override something that she was raised to believe was right. He stares at her, and something cold and dangerous stirs in his chest. He opens the wallet. Inside is the photograph of a woman. She is young. Dark hair. Smiling at the camera the way people smile when they do not know a photograph is being taken, when joy is genuine and unguarded. Her name was Maria. She has been dead for 3 years. She was his wife. Aleandro does not move. His hand does not shake. But inside his chest, behind his ribs, something cracks like a thin sheet of ice beneath someone's weight. "What is your name?" he asks. "Nora," she says. "Nora Morgan." He slides a card across the table. It is blank except for a phone number. A single phone number and nothing else. "In 3 days," he says, "you will call this number. You will tell them everything that has happened to you. Everything. They will listen. And then you will tell them what you need." "I cannot." "You are not asking permission," Aleandro says. "I am telling you how this is going to work." He stands. He places 2 $100 bills on the table. He walks toward the door, and Enzo follows, and the rain swallows them both before Nora can move, before she can breathe, before she can process what has just happened. Carol the waitress appears beside her booth. "Honey," Carol says, her voice shaking slightly, "do you know who that was?" Nora does not answer. She is looking at the card in her trembling hands. She is looking at the $200. And somewhere in the back of her mind, in the place where hope dies very quietly and no one hears it, something small begins to wake. But what she does not know, what could not possibly know, is that she has just returned something to Aleandro Castellano that he has spent 3 years trying to accept that he would never see again. She does not know that in his hand, he is holding a photograph of the woman he loved more than his own life. She does not know that she has just altered the trajectory of everything that comes next, that she has set in motion a series of events that will tear through Boston like a knife through silk, that will destroy empires and rebuild them, that will turn 2 broken people into something neither of them can yet imagine. 3 days. She has 3 days before she must call the number on the card. She has $125,000 to find before the foreclosure notice becomes official. She has Emma waiting at her mother's apartment, waiting for a mother who is running out of time. Outside, the rain continues to fall, and in a black SUV parked 3 blocks away, Aleandro Castellano is holding a photograph of his dead wife in one hand and a business card with a name written on the back in Nora's careful handwriting in the other. Enzo glances at him from the driver's seat. "What do you want to do?" For a long moment, Aleandro does not respond. He simply stares at the photograph. 3 years. 3 years without her. 3 years of keeping her memory in a wallet and never allowing himself to feel anything about it, because feeling meant breaking, and breaking meant that the Castellano family would see weakness, and weakness meant that someone would use it to bring him down. "Find her," Aleandro says quietly. "Find out who she is. Find out everything. And Enzo, find out who hurt her." The SUV pulls into traffic. The rain drums against the windows. And at Murphy's Diner, Nora Morgan is holding $200 in her hand and crying silently, trying to understand what has just happened, what kindness from a stranger might actually mean. She does not know yet. But she will. 48 hours before the diner. 48 hours before the wallet. 48 hours before a stranger's kindness would crack open the door to a future Nora Morgan had stopped believing in. The 2004 Honda Civic smells like stale coffee and desperation. Grey fabric seats worn smooth by sleeping, a child's car seat in the back collecting dust because Emma is not here, because Emma is 3 miles away in her grandmother's apartment with a court-ordered supervisor watching every interaction like a hawk studying prey. The back seat holds 2 backpacks containing everything Nora owns in this world, 3 changes of clothes, a phone charger with a cracked screen, a framed photograph of Emma at age 4 with a gap-toothed smile that makes Nora's chest collapse inward every single time. The parking lot of the I-95 rest stop at 5:48 in the morning is nearly empty. A trucker sleeps in his cab for rows over. The sky above is the color of old bruises. Nora wakes with her neck bent at an angle that will punish her all day, her shoulders cramped, her mouth tasting like the inside of a sleeping bag. She does not move at first. She simply lies there in the dim light filtering through the windows, knowing exactly what comes next, the same routine she has performed for 93 consecutive mornings. The gas station bathroom 200 yards away smells like industrial cleaner and broken dreams. Nora stands at the sink and runs water over her face and neck and armpits, using the thin brown paper towels that fall apart in her hands like tissue. The mirror shows her a woman who is 29 years old but looks like something else entirely, someone who has been running, someone whom life has worn down the way a river wears stone. Her dark hair is pulled into a knot. Her eyes, which were once brown and warm, have taken on a hollow quality, like windows with no light behind them. There is a fading bruise along her left jawline from where Douglas Hale grabbed her 3 weeks ago, before she ran. She changes her shirt in a bathroom stall. The clean one is white and reads Meals Express in fading blue letters on the chest. She has been wearing this shirt to deliver lunches since 6 in the morning for 782 consecutive days. She brushes her teeth with bottled water from the trunk of her car because the tap water tastes like rust and she cannot afford to get sick, cannot miss a single shift, cannot allow herself the luxury of being even 1 degree less than functional. By 6:15 a.m. she is driving. The roads are empty except for other people like her, workers heading to jobs that pay minimum wage, that offer no benefits, that treat human beings like replaceable machine parts. Her first delivery is a chicken sandwich with no onions and extra mayo to an office building in downtown Boston. The payment is $4.73. She gets a $2 tip from a woman who is eating the sandwich at her desk at 6:16 a.m., which means this woman has also woken before dawn, which means this woman also understands the mathematics of survival. By 8 p.m., Nora has made 11 deliveries. Her earnings total $47.18. She adds this to the $80.25 from yesterday, which she adds to the $127.43 in her checking account, and the total is heartbreaking. It is $184.86. It is nothing. It is a number so small that it does not deserve to exist. She pulls into the parking lot of the pharmacy at 8:23 p.m. Her phone buzzes with an order. She has 2 hours to pick up a prescription medication and deliver it to an address in Jamaica Plain, which is across the city, which is 45 minutes in traffic. The payment is $8. $8 to drive 45 minutes there and 45 minutes back and hope the recipient tips. She accepts the job before even thinking about it, because thinking leads to hesitation, and hesitation leads to missed opportunities, and missed opportunities lead to foreclosure notices becoming official, lead to Emma being placed with foster parents, lead to a life that ends the same way it has always ended, with nothing. The pharmacy counter is crowded at 8:31 p.m. A woman in a blue vest scans medications with the kind of exhaustion that comes from standing for 10 hours. Nora waits, hands shaking slightly, thinking about her bank account and the number $125,000 and the number 72 hours and the way these numbers do not align in any universe where mathematics makes sense. The prescription is ready. She takes the white paper bag. The pharmacist does not look at her. No one ever looks at her. The drive to Jamaica Plain is through neighborhoods where the streetlights flicker like dying things. Nora's Civic sounds like it is coughing, which it is, which means her transmission is failing, which means she will need $800 to fix it that she does not have. She concentrates on the road. She concentrates on arriving alive. She does not think about the foreclosure notice in her glove compartment because thinking about it makes her hyperventilate, and she cannot hyperventilate while driving because that is how accidents happen, and accidents mean hospital bills and hospital bills mean losing everything faster. The address is a small house with a porch light that flickers on and off. An older man answers the door. He takes the prescription without speaking. He does not tip. She drives back through darkness listening to the engine cough and counting her failures like rosary beads. By 11:34 p.m. she has completed 4 more deliveries and earned $22.50. Total for the day, $139.68. She has been awake for 17 hours. She has consumed 1 cup of free coffee from the pharmacy break room and 4 crackers stolen from a gas station she felt too guilty to steal from, so she consumed them in the car with deep shame. Her stomach hurts. Her neck hurts. Her hands hurt from gripping the steering wheel. The gas station bathroom at 11:53 p.m. is where she washes her face again, changes back into her sleeping shirt, brushes her teeth with bottled water, and uses the bathroom because her bladder is something she can still control even though everything else has spiraled away. She looks in the mirror and does not recognize the person looking back. This person is a stranger, and strangers are easier to despise than the person you used to be. The drive back to the rest stop takes 40 minutes. She pulls into a parking space at 12:31 a.m. The trucker from this morning is gone. A different trucker has taken his place. Nora locks the doors and reclines the front seat and pulls the jacket across her body like a blanket and closes her eyes. Sleep does not come immediately. It comes in fragments, in nightmares where Emma is calling for her and Nora's legs will not move, where numbers spiral into infinity and she is falling through darkness, where the look on the caseworker's face repeats on loop like a curse that cannot be erased. At 6:15 a.m. she wakes again. Day 94 begins identically to day 93. 3 blocks away from where the rest stop sits, inside a building that houses offices for a man named Douglas Hale, Nora's file is spread across a mahogany desk. Douglas Hale is 53 years old, though he looks older, though he moves younger, with a kind of controlled energy that comes from knowing exactly how to hurt people and having practiced that knowledge for 3 decades. His hair is silver at the temples, his suit is tailored, his shoes cost more than Nora makes in a month. He is beautiful in the way a viper is beautiful, in the way a trap is beautiful right before it closes. He studies her file. Nora Morgan. 29. Divorced. Lost custody due to housing instability. Works multiple jobs. Desperate. Desperate people are the most valuable people because they will do things that comfortable people will not do. He has been building his network for 15 years, 1 desperate woman at a time, 1 forced smile and 1 offered opportunity and 1 moment of saying no before they understand that no is not actually a choice. He had approached her 3 weeks ago outside the warehouse where she picks up catering deliveries. He had introduced himself as owner of a staffing agency that pays very well for women who are willing to work as independent contractors, recruiting other women into his network. She had listened because she was hungry and he was offering money. But then she had said no. She had actually said the word no to his face. Douglas Hale does not forget people who say no. He picks up his phone. "Find her," he says to the person on the other end. His voice is smooth, is reasonable, is the sound of poison in a wine glass. "Find out where she lives. Find out where she works. Find out who she loves. And bring her to me. I will teach her how the world actually works. I will teach her what happens to women who refuse me." At 4:17 p.m. that same day, summer clouds are gathering over Boston. The sky is turning a color that meteorologists would call gray, but that meteorologists do not have words for what it really means. It means the air is changing. It means the barometric pressure is dropping. It means a storm is coming that will arrive with force and with no mercy. Nora is driving to her final delivery of the day. She is thinking about Emma. Emma is 6 years old now. Emma was born on a Tuesday in March with dark eyes and a cry like a wounded animal, and Nora had promised her in the hospital room that she would never let anything hurt her. That promise has crumbled. That promise is ashes. The supervised visitation happened yesterday in a grey social services office that smells like institutional failure and broken families. Mrs. Chen sat across from Nora with a folder and an expression that did not change, the expression of someone who has seen 10,000 women like Nora and will see 10,000 more. Emma had asked in that small voice that contains the entire universe, "When can I come home with you, Mommy?" Nora had smiled, had used muscles in her face that she had not used in months because smiling requires believing that something might actually be okay. "Soon, sweetheart. Very soon." Mrs. Chen had waited until Emma was in the bathroom with a monitor before she spoke. "You understand, Miss Morgan, that if you lose that property, you lose this case. The courts do not award custody to women without stable housing. You have 72 hours. 72 hours. Nora had known this. She had known this every day for the past 8 months, had known it the way you know that gravity exists, the way you know that water is wet, the way you know that some people are born into lives where the math never works and the numbers never add up and hope is a luxury item they cannot afford. The delivery is to a law firm on the 15th floor of a building downtown. The lawyer who answers the door is young and female and wearing a suit that costs more than Nora makes in 6 months. She takes the sandwich, does not look at Nora, closes the door. At 4:53 p.m., the first drops of rain begin to fall. Small drops, testing the atmosphere, measuring the resistance. Nora is driving back toward the rest stop because the rest stop is where she sleeps and sleeping is where she stops thinking and stopping thinking is where she survives. The rain increases. By 5:12 p.m. it has become something serious, something with intention, something that drums against the windshield like a punishment. She thinks about Douglas Hale. She thinks about his hand on her arm and the way his grip had tightened and the way his voice had said, "I do not like the word no, Nora." She thinks about the way he had smiled while saying it, the way his smile never reached his eyes, the way his eyes were the color of something that has been dead for a very long time. The rain is everywhere now. It fills the gutters and overflows them. It streams down the windshield faster than the wipers can clear it. Nora's hands are shaking on the steering wheel. She is thinking about Emma. She is thinking about the foreclosure notice. She is thinking about the number $125,000 and the number 72 hours and the way these numbers are colliding with her life like a collision with no survivors. At 5:06 p.m., the summer thunderstorm breaks open over Boston like the sky is splitting. Lightning cracks across the clouds. The sound of it is enormous. The sound of it is the sound of everything breaking at once. The rain was everywhere now. It filled the gutters and overflows them. It streamed down the windshield faster than the wipers can clear it. Nora's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. She was thinking about Emma. She was thinking about the foreclosure notice. She was thinking about the number $125,000 and the number 72 hours and the way these numbers were colliding with her life like a collision with no survivors. At 5:47 p.m., the summer thunderstorm broke open over Boston like the sky itself was splitting. Lightning cracked across the clouds. The sound of it was enormous. The sound of it was the sound of everything breaking at once. By 11:47 p.m., the storm had turned vicious. The kind of storm that makes you believe the weather has a personal vendetta. Nora was driving through industrial Boston, near the docks, delivering the last sandwich from her shift to a warehouse office. $3 tip if she was lucky. $3 that would bring her total to $8. $8 to last until tomorrow night. The pavement was black and slick and the rain made everything look like it was melting. She finished the delivery at 12:03 a.m. As she walked back to her car, two men stepped out from between the buildings. One had a tattoo snaking up his neck like a scar that would never fade. They worked for Douglas Hale. She knew it before they spoke because she recognized the way they moved, the way violence lived in their shoulders. She ran. Her sneakers slapped wet pavement. Thunder drowned her screams. The rain was so thick she could barely see the street in front of her. Behind her, footsteps. Getting closer. Her lungs were burning. Her legs were screaming. She cut through an alley, but it was a dead end, a brick wall at the end that rose up like the end of the world. One man caught her by the hair. Slammed her against the brick wall. His hand closed around her throat. Squeezed. The world went dark at the edges. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. There was only pain and the weight of his hand and the knowledge that this was how it ended, in an alley in Boston in the rain, nobody knowing her name. The tattoo man punched her eye. An explosion of pain and darkness. She felt her eye socket fill with fire. Both men were dragging her toward a van parked 3 cars down. Their fingers dug into her jacket. She twisted, pulled, tried to make herself small enough to slip away, but she was just one person and there were 2 of them and they were stronger. A black SUV turned the corner. Headlights swept across the alley like a searchlight. The men froze. Then they scattered like roaches, running in opposite directions, disappearing into the rain like they had never existed at all. The SUV didn't stop. It just passed by, heading toward the waterfront. But it was enough. Nora crawled to her car. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped her keys twice. She sat in the driver's seat breathing like an animal that had just escaped a trap. Her eye was already swelling shut. She could feel the bruises blooming on her throat where his hand had been. She tasted blood. She couldn't stay here. They would find her. The car was too exposed. They would trace her plates. They would come back. She drove blind through the rain with one eye working, no destination, just away. She pulled into the rest stop parking lot at 2:58 a.m. Sat in the dark breathing through the pain. The pain was everywhere, a low constant hum in her skull. She stumbled out of the car into the rain. The diner across the parking lot had lights on. She could see it through the downpour, a beacon of warmth and safety that didn't belong to her, that would never belong to someone like her, but she was cold and hurt and desperate enough to try. That was when she saw it. A leather wallet half submerged in a puddle near the diner entrance. Brown leather, expensive, soaked through with rain. She picked it up. Her fingers were numb and she almost dropped it twice. She opened it. No cash inside. But credit cards with the name Aleandro Castellano. A Massachusetts driver's license showing a face so severe it looked like it had been carved from stone. And one photograph. A beautiful dark-haired woman. Formal portrait. Obviously expensive. She was frozen behind plastic like a relic, like something precious and gone forever. The woman in the photograph was obviously dead. Not dead in the moment the photo was taken, but dead now. Preserved like that because someone loved her. Someone had kept her alive in plastic when nothing else could bring her back. Nora walked into the diner. The bell chimed. Every sound felt too loud. The sizzle of the grill, the scrape of a coffee cup, the buzz of neon lights overhead. It was 3:22 in the morning and the diner was almost empty. A waitress in her 50s named Diane was behind the counter. One customer. A man in a black suit sitting 3 booths away from the door with an untouched cup of coffee going cold. Nora slid into the furthest booth from the door. She kept her swollen eye turned away, hidden. Diane came over immediately with water. She froze when she saw Nora's face. The way Nora's throat was already bruising. The way her left eye was already starting to close. "Honey, who did this to you?" Diane's voice was gentle but her eyes were hard. Nora shook her head. Her voice came out scraped raw, like it had been dragged across gravel. "Just need to sit for a while." She pulled the wallet out of her jacket pocket. "Found this outside. Someone lost it. I just wanted to return it." Diane took it. She walked it to the counter where the man in the black suit was sitting. Nora watched through her one good eye as Diane approached him. As she set the wallet on his table, the man opened it. He looked at the wallet. Then at Diane. Then his eyes cut across the diner to Nora. It was the kind of look that lasted less than a second but felt like it lasted forever. The kind of look that measured something. Calculated something. Decided something. He was 6'3", maybe taller. Broad across the shoulders. Dark hair. A scar ran from the corner of his left eye down to his cheekbone. His suit was black and tailored and probably cost more than everything Nora owned. He wore a gold watch. Silver rings on 3 fingers. He stood. He walked to her booth without asking permission. He sat across from her. "You found this?" His voice was deep and solid like an oath. Like something carved into stone. Nora nodded. "Where?" "Outside in the rain. I just wanted to return it." He opened the wallet. He looked at the photograph of the dead woman. His jaw worked. "This photo? My wife. 3 years ago she was killed. This is all I have left of her." Nora whispered something that wasn't quite words. "I am so sorry." He studied her. All of her injuries at once. The way violence had written itself across her skin in bruises and swelling. "You could have taken the credit cards. Sold them. You look like you need money." She flinched. "I am not a thief." Something shifted in his expression. A door opening. A decision being made. "Stay here. Do not move." He stood and walked outside. Through the diner window, Nora watched him make a phone call. His back was to her. His shoulders were straight. He wasn't asking for anything. He was commanding it. 15 minutes later, 2 men arrived. One was tall and lean. The other was wider, thicker, built like he could stop a car with his bare hands. They wore dark suits. They moved like soldiers. Enzo and Luca. They saw Nora and something registered on their faces. Shock. Confusion. In that moment, Nora understood that whatever was about to happen, it was unprecedented. It didn't belong in their world. It was breaking something. The man with the scar said, "Find out who hurt her. Find out everything about her." Enzo hesitated. "Boss, she is just..." The man cut him off. His voice was cold as winter. "She returned something precious to me when she had every reason not to. That means something. Now find out who put their hands on her." Luca pulled out a phone. Started making calls. Within minutes they had what they needed. Douglas Hale. Human trafficker? Federal warrants in 3 states. A network of at least 40 women he controlled. A partner named Cordelia Blackwood. Old money. Beacon Hill. She used her social position to identify vulnerable targets and feed them to Hale. They had been untouchable for years. The man's face went cold. Something ancient and dangerous woke up behind his eyes. Not anymore. Nora tried to leave, but he blocked her path. Not unkindly. Just immovably. You have nowhere safe to go. I can see that. Let me help you. She shook her head. Tears cut through the grime on her face. Why would you help me? I am nobody. You do not know me. He sat back down. For the first time his voice softened. I was nobody once. My family came from nothing. My brother and I built everything from dirt and blood. So I know what nobody looks like. And I know what desperation looks like. You returned my wife to me when you needed money more than your next breath. That is not nobody. That is someone who still has honor left. Over the next hour, Nora told her story in broken pieces. Emma. The foreclosure. The custody case. $125,000 due in 72 hours now. All she had left was $5. 5. The gap between 5 and 125,000 wasn't a gap. It was a canyon. It was the distance between possible and impossible. Aleandro listened without interrupting. When she finished, he made one phone call. 20 minutes later, the folder arrived. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, in a Beacon Hill townhouse that cost more than most people earned in a decade, Cordelia Blackwood was sipping wine and making calls. Her voice was smooth like poison. You will not believe what happened, darling. This desperate creature, I tried to help her of course, and she stole a family heirloom right from my home. Can you imagine? The betrayal. She hung up and smiled. The rumors would spread like fire. By morning, every social circle in Boston would know that Nora Morgan was a thief. That she was desperate. That she was the kind of person you kept your distance from. Nora Morgan, who had never stolen anything. Who had returned a wallet that contained credit cards she could have used. Who had nothing left but $5 and a broken heart. Back in the diner, Aleandro made another phone call. His voice was quiet, but the men in the booth with him understood that worlds were about to change. That someone had drawn a line that should never have been crossed. The rain continued to fall. The rain hammered against the motel window like 1,000 angry fists. Nora Morgan sat on the edge of the bed at 2 in the morning, a ballpoint pen trembling in her hand, motel stationery crumpled beneath her fingers. The room smelled like old cigarettes and broken promises. One lamp cast everything in sickly yellow. She had written the first sentence 7 times and crossed it out 7 times. Aleandro. Even writing his name felt like a betrayal. She pressed the pen to paper and the words came, shaky and desperate and true. If you're reading this, I am already gone. I do not know why you helped me, but I know I cannot let you pay the price for my cursed life. Douglas will not stop. Cordelia has power I cannot fight. If I stay, I will destroy you like I destroy everything I touch. Her fingers ached. Every word was a nail in a coffin she was building for herself. You gave me something I forgot existed. The feeling that someone saw me as human. I will carry that with me wherever I go. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Take care of yourself. Some people are born under bad stars and I am one of them. You deserve better than the trouble I bring. I am sorry. She folded the letter twice. Did not sign it. Her signature would be a promise and she could not keep promises anymore. 2 backpacks sat by the door, packed in the dark while Aleandro slept in the chair by the window, his breathing deep and even, one hand resting on the gun in his lap even in sleep. The $200 he had left for her was hidden in her jacket pocket. Enough to get to Vermont. Enough to disappear into the mountains where no one knew her name and she could not hurt anyone else. She moved like a ghost, like she had learned to move a long time ago when survival meant being invisible. One step at a time. One breath at a time. She opened the door and the hinges did not creak because she held them, guided them closed like she was putting a sleeping child down. The hallway was empty. 3 a.m. The whole world sleeping while she ran. The motel stairs descended into darkness. Her hand slid along the railing. Below, the parking lot stretched empty except for one black Lincoln Continental and a dozen shadows that might have been anything. Nora walked toward the bus station 6 blocks away. The rain was gentler now, but the cold cut through her jacket like a blade wrapped in ice. She counted her steps. 100. 200. 300. Keep walking. Do not look back. Do not think about Emma sleeping in a foster care placement. Do not think about the social worker's disappointed face. Do not think about the custody hearing that will happen in 3 weeks without her. The bus terminal appeared through the rain like a ship in fog. Yellow lights. The smell of diesel fuel and human despair. 20 people waited inside, all of them looking like they had been running from something. A woman with a black eye and no luggage. An old man counting coins that would never be enough. A teenager with arms wrapped in bandages. Nora bought a ticket to Burlington. Cash. No name. The clerk did not care. Burlington cost $87. She had 200. That left 113 for food and survival until she could find work under a fake name and become nobody again, nobody forever. She sat on a bench outside the terminal. The rain was starting again, cold drops mixing with tears. She did not know she was crying. In her jacket pocket, the foreclosure notice felt like a stone. 3 days. 72 hours. And now there was no one to save her and no one to save Emma, and no point in staying alive if the only thing you could do was destroy people who tried to love you. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single text message: if you get on that bus I will drag you off it myself. Turn around. Nora's hand shook. She looked up. Aleandro stood 20 feet away in the rain, suit soaked black, his hair plastered to his forehead, his face carved from stone and fury. Behind him, Enzo and Luca flanked his shoulders like guardians at the gates of hell. He walked toward her slowly, each step deliberate, and the world seemed to stop and hold its breath. He took the backpacks from her shoulders without speaking. His hands were warm. Everything else in her life was cold, but his hands were warm. He dropped the bags on the wet pavement where they landed with a sound like surrender. You do not get to decide you are not worth saving, he said, and his voice was rough like gravel and thunder mixed together. That is my choice. And I choose you. Now we finish this. Behind him, Enzo made a call. The rain continued to fall as if the sky itself was weeping. 3 hours later, Douglas Hale stood in a warehouse in Southie counting inventory. For shipping containers. For women locked inside, crying so quietly the sound barely existed. This was how Douglas operated. Not with noise and spectacle. With silence and routine and the kind of evil that wore a suit and smiled at charity galas. He had been doing this for 16 years. No one had stopped him. No one was going to stop him. The warehouse door opened. 12 men in black moved like ghosts, like smoke, like death deciding to take physical form. Douglas looked up from his clipboard and his face went gray. He recognized none of them. That was somehow worse than if he had. He ran for the back exit, feet slapping on concrete, lungs burning, the sound of footsteps behind him like the drumbeat of his own ending. Luca caught him 3 feet from the door. Luca was 6'4" and weighed 240 pounds and had been a soldier for Aleandro for 12 years. He grabbed Douglas by the collar and slammed him against a concrete pillar hard enough to crack the plaster. Douglas collapsed trembling like a cornered animal, his voice high and desperate and small. You do not understand. I have protection. I have partners. You cannot touch me. Aleandro stepped into the warehouse light. Douglas's eyes went wide. Wide and full of the knowledge of what was about to happen. He tried to crawl backward but his legs would not obey. Fear had rendered him into something animal and broken. You put your hands on someone under my protection, Aleandro said, and his voice was cold as a February dawn in Boston. You sent your men to hunt her. You brought your filth into my city. You thought you were invisible. You thought you had power. But power is a thing I decide. And what you are about to learn is that there are consequences for crossing a line you never should have approached. Douglas shook his head. Please. I have money. How much do you want? 5 million? 10 million? Aleandro did not move. Death would be too quick for you. Too easy. Too merciful. That is not what you deserve. He made a gesture with one hand. Enzo picked up his phone and made one call. 20 minutes later, 3 black cars pulled up to the warehouse loading dock. Men stepped out. They wore grey suits and they had the kind of faces that had seen every dark thing a human could do to another human. The captain looked at Douglas and smiled without any warmth. We have been looking for you for a very long time, he said. The Antonelli family does not forget. Their daughter is still in therapy. Still wakes up screaming. You are going to pay for that in ways you cannot imagine. Douglas screamed as they dragged him toward the cars, fingernails scraping concrete, voice echoing in the warehouse like the sound of hell itself opening its mouth. Aleandro did not watch. He turned away and walked out into the night where Nora waited in the car with Enzo beside her, her hand shaking in her lap. Across the city, in a Beacon Hill townhouse that cost $4 million, Cordelia Blackwood was sleeping the sleep of the blameless. She woke to the doorbell ringing at 6 a.m. For a moment she thought it was her housekeeper. Then she heard the footsteps. Multiple footsteps. She opened the door in her silk robe to find 4 men in blue windbreakers with FBI printed across the chest. Cordelia Marie Blackwood, the lead agent said, holding up a warrant. You have the right to remain silent. Cordelia's face went white. Do you know who I am? My family built this city. Your family does not own federal prison, the agent said flatly. You have the right to an attorney. The handcuffs were silver. Expensive. They caught the morning light as the agent clicked them around her wrists. Through her open door, her neighbors watched from their windows. News vans were already arriving, engines rumbling, cameras rising like weapons on the street outside her home. By noon, her assets were frozen. By evening, her foundation had been dissolved. By the next morning, every financial record of her conspiracy with Douglas Hale, every wire transfer, every charity gala where trafficking victims had been sold like merchandise, was public knowledge. The trial lasted for months. The verdict took 2 hours. The sentence was 40 years in a federal penitentiary in upstate New York. And that night, 3 blocks from the diner where it all began, Aleandro and Nora sat in the back of his car as it moved through the rain-washed streets of Boston. Her hand was in his. His thumb traced small circles on her palm. It is over, he said. She nodded but could not speak. Emma will be released to you by Friday. The foreclosure is reversed. Everything you lost is being returned. Why, she whispered. Why did you do this? He turned to look at her and there was something in his eyes that had never been there before. Something soft. Something human. Because someone once told me that a hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. Tonight, I became that hand. The rain continued to fall on Boston like a blessing, like forgiveness, like the world itself was weeping with joy. 1 week after the federal agents took Cordelia Blackwood away in silver handcuffs, Nora Morgan stood in the hallway of the Boston Family Court building and could not feel her legs. Mrs. Chen, the caseworker who had watched her fail for 2 years, had just testified under oath. Stable housing. Financial security. Employment. The judge's gavel had come down like a blessing, like the sound of a door unlocking after a lifetime in chains. Custody of Emma restored, effective immediately. Effective immediately. Those 2 words were all that existed in the world. She found Emma in the waiting room, small and 6 years old, wearing a yellow dress that Aleandro had bought her, swinging her legs against the chair because they did not touch the floor. When Emma saw her mother's face, something in the child's expression shifted from patient waiting to absolute recognition. Mommy. You came back. You came back. I knew you would. Emma's small arms wrapped around Nora's neck, and suddenly Nora was on her knees in the hallway, tears falling so hard she could not breathe, her daughter's weight in her arms, the only real thing in a world that had been made of smoke for so long. "I will never leave you again, baby. Never." The words fell into Emma's hair like a prayer, and the child held tighter, understanding without understanding, knowing only that the person she loved was here and would not dissolve into nothing like everyone else had. That night, the house her grandmother had left her, the house that was supposed to be foreclosed, that would have been sold to strangers by now, stood quiet and dark at the end of Maple Street. Nora moved through the rooms like someone visiting a museum of her own life. The kitchen where her mother had taught her to make sauce. The bedroom where she had planned to raise Emma. The front porch where she had sat counting pennies 1,000 times, watching the numbers never be enough. Aleandro had paid the $125,000 outright. When she had tried to refuse, when she had tried to explain that she would repay every cent, he had stopped her with a single sentence. "You gave me back my wife's memory when you could have sold it. This is nothing compared to that." At 8 o'clock, his car arrived, a black sedan that moved through the quiet street like a predator at rest, powerful but not loud about it. Emma was already asleep upstairs, exhausted from the day's miracle, from finally understanding that the waiting was over. Nora heard his footsteps on the porch, measured and deliberate, the way a man walks when he owns the ground beneath him. She had made coffee in her own kitchen, and set 2 cups on the table where she had sat so many nights calculating survival. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that had probably cost more than her rent. His dark hair was slightly wet from the November rain. But it was his eyes that caught her, those storm-gray eyes that had watched her return his wallet with something like recognition, as if he had been waiting for her his entire life without knowing it. He sat across from her at the table, and there was something vulnerable in the way he held the coffee cup, as if he was afraid it might break. She tried to find words big enough for what he had done. The words all fell short. He watched her struggling, and then he spoke, his voice deep and solid like an oath. 6 years ago, my brother sold our family's roots to the Volkov syndicate. He was drowning in gambling debts, and he chose betrayal. 12 of our men died in the ambush that followed. 12. He came to me after, broken, begging forgiveness. I had a choice in that moment. Mercy or survival. Family or the business that kept 100 families fed. I chose survival. I chose the family that stayed loyal. I had him exiled. He died alone in Prague 2 years later, and every single day since, I have carried that choice like a stone in my chest. Aleandro set the coffee cup down, and the rain outside the window drummed harder against the glass. When I saw you in that diner, beaten and desperate and still honest enough to return a wallet you could have sold for rent money, I saw something I thought I had destroyed in myself. I saw a chance to choose different. To choose mercy. To prove my brother was wrong about what I am. Nora reached across the table without thinking. Her hand found his. His thumb traced small circles on her palm, the same gesture he had made in the car, and she understood that this man had been reaching out for her long before they ever met. "You are not what your brother made you," she whispered. "You are what you chose to be in that diner. You are what you chose to be when you could have turned away." He looked at their joined hands, and something raw and fragile crossed his face. For a moment, he was not the most dangerous man in Boston. He was just a man who had carried grief so long he had forgotten what mercy felt like. "And you are not nobody. You never were. Not in that diner at 3 a.m. Not when you were sleeping in your car. Not when you had $5 in your pocket and nowhere else to go. You were always somebody, Nora. You just needed someone brave enough to see it." 3 months stretched out like a gift after that. Nora found work at a law firm downtown, administrative work, steady pay, benefits that included health insurance and a dental plan. Emma started first grade and came home every afternoon with new drawings, new stories, the kind of happiness that only children can construct when they finally feel safe. The foreclosure notice that had lived in Nora's pocket for 2 years, crumpled and stained with coffee and tears, went into a box in the attic. She had not needed it for anything except to remember that she had survived. Aleandro visited twice a week, always at the same time, always bringing something small. A book about dragons. A toy car. A notebook with blank pages. Nothing extravagant, nothing that screamed wealth or power, but chosen with the kind of care that made it clear he was learning how to love people instead of controlling them. He would sit at the kitchen table while Nora made dinner and Emma did her homework, and there was something in the ordinariness of it that felt like a revolution. A man who could order the destruction of his enemies, sitting at a kitchen table, asking Emma about her spelling test. The romance between them built slowly, earned through small moments. Hands brushing when passing coffee. Conversations that stretched past midnight while Emma slept upstairs. The way he watched Nora read to his daughter with something soft and terrified in his dangerous eyes, as if he still could not believe this was real, as if it might disappear if he looked away. One evening in late February, Emma asked him if he would braid her hair before bed. Aleandro, who commanded men with a single glance, sat on the edge of a 6-year-old's bed and learned the difference between a regular braid and a French braid from YouTube videos on his phone. Emma fell asleep to the feeling of his careful fingers in her hair, and Nora watched from the doorway and understood that this was what mercy looked like when it had hands. The diner was the same at 3 a.m. as it had been 3 months ago. Same checkered floor. Same neon glow humming against the darkness. Same smell of coffee and grease and thyme. Diane, the night shift waitress, brought coffee without being asked and smiled when she saw them sitting in the exact booth where everything had begun. The anniversary of the night that changed everything. Nora stirred her coffee and looked out at the rain-washed street. "I keep thinking about the odds," she said quietly. "If I had not found your wallet. If you had not been here that exact night. If I had been too afraid to return it. All the ways this does not happen. We do not find each other. Emma stays lost in the system. You stay alone in that grief." Aleandro reached across the table and took her hand the way he had that first night in his car. "I spent 3 years sitting in this booth every year on the anniversary of my wife's death, punishing myself for not being there when she needed me. I sat here and drank coffee and wanted to die. This year I was here and someone else needed me. Maybe that is the point. Maybe we do not move past grief. Maybe we build something new alongside it, something strong enough to carry the weight of everything we lost." Nora leaned her head on his shoulder and his arm wrapped around her, holding her the way a man holds something precious, something fragile, something he has learned is worth protecting. Outside the window, Boston woke to another sunrise, and the rain kept falling like a blessing, like forgiveness, like the world itself was weeping with joy. "I thought I was cursed," Nora whispered, speaking almost to herself now. "I thought I destroyed everything I touched. But maybe I was just waiting for someone who understood that broken does not mean worthless. That desperate does not mean disposable. That sometimes the most dangerous man in the city is the only one brave enough to see you as human when everyone else sees you as invisible. Aleandro saved me. But in saving me, he saved something in himself too, the part his brother's betrayal almost killed, the part that still believed mercy and survival could coexist. We are not a fairy tale. We are two people who found each other in the darkest hour and chose not to let go. Sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who needs to remember that they are not invisible, that they are not nobody, that their story is not over. Subscribe because tomorrow we have another story of lives transformed in unexpected ways. Drop a comment telling us, have you ever had a stranger change your life? We read every single one. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next story.